El Classico, like usual, was absolute cinema. However, this time, fans weren't just tuning in for football alone. They came ready with the popcorn, because this wasn't just about Barcelona versus Real Madrid. For the Madrid players, it was very personal, as everything leading up to this match felt like a full-blown soap opera. Because on October 24th, just days before kickoff, Lamine Yamal appeared on a podcast and delivered the now infamous line heard around the footballing world. They steal and they complain. A clear jab at Madrid, and everyone knew it. The fallout was instant. Within hours, Madrid fans were furious. Social media turned into a bigger war zone than usual, and timelines were flooded with heated debates, edits mocking each other's clubs, and old scandals being dragged back up. Corruption cases, referee conspiracies, all of it. The match hadn't even started yet, but the chaos and toxicity was at its peak. Then came kickoff, and ironically, Yamal's words seemed to fuel Madrid rather than rattle them. And what's more is that the rest of Barca were also heavily locked in. They had to back up Lamine's words after all. Overall, it was a physical and chaotic match, but a very high-level one, nevertheless. The only thing though was that Yamal, for the first time in a long time, was practically invisible. The player who just called out Madrid in a way that most professional footballers would know is considered unprofessional, ended up barely touching the ball and was a non-factor. So much so that memes would surface after the match stating that Yamal didn't even play. And to make things worse, after the final whistle, Dani Carvajal, Yamal's own national team captain, walked straight up to him and said, "You talk too much. Talk now." One could say it was poetic, brutal even, but for Yamal, it was humiliating. Up to the point that many football fans in the world, not just Real Madrid fans, would not only openly meme Lamine Yamal, but they would also join in to condemn his behavior overall. It was so bad that Lamine Yamal and a few other teammates would unfollow Dani Carvajal on Instagram. But seemingly within a span of a week, Lamine Yamal would go from beloved wonder kid to the most hated footballer in the world. But actually, if you look deeper, it was slowly building up to this. But how exactly did it end up this way? Because a year ago, this version of Lamine Yamal didn't exist. He had his doubters, but he was overwhelmingly loved. Before, we'd never see Lamine Yamal make comments before big matches. Like before facing France in the 2024 Euro semi-final, Adrien Rabiot would make comments along the lines of, "If Lamine Yamal wants to reach the final, he'll have to do much more than what he's done so far." And although Rabiot's words weren't that crazy of a statement, it could have still easily provoked a reaction. But all Lamine Yamal would simply do is post an Instagram story with the caption, "Move in silence." Because what's poetic is that he would do exactly what Adrien Rabiot said he should, right in front of his own face, as he would curl a beautiful long-range shot over to the top corner. And it was only after Lamine and Spain had won the match that Lamine himself would finally respond, "Habla ahora," or basically, "talk now," a direct clapback to Rabiot. Only after delivering on the pitch would he go online to respond to his critics. Never bitter, only using his wits and class. And that's why a lot of people outside Barcelona fans loved him. He had the aura of a kid who was confident, not cocky. A generational talent, but still humble. But as undoubtedly world-class and young as Lamine Yamal is, as he only gets better, naturally, so will his confidence. However, this year, a lot of football fans would start to notice things go a bit overboard. But understandably, throughout most of the year, frustration was incredibly high for Real Madrid fans. Not only did they lose 5-2 to Barcelona in the Spanish Super Cup earlier in January, but also during the Copa del Rey final in April, just as it was looking like Real Madrid were about to take their revenge. A late 84th minute equalizer from Torres would keep them alive long enough for Koundé to score a 116th minute match-winning goal, handing Real Madrid another crushing 3-2 defeat. And it was after that Copa del Rey final that Lamine Yamal would say, "Real Madrid simply can't beat us." And hey, he was right. Barcelona won the match and they were allowed to do the talking. However, it was after this that the public view of Lamine Yamal would slowly start to shift downward. And the earliest account I can find of this is all the way back in the summer, while he was playing for Spain in the Nations League. As you all remember, Lamine Yamal was in incredible form, even though they lost against Inter in the Champions League, although Rafinha was their best player throughout the entire Champions League campaign. For that specific matchup against Inter Milan, Lamine Yamal was the most informed player at Barcelona. And for Spain as well, he was arguably their best player in the tournament. He would have 4 goal contributions in 7 matches. In fact, it was his current form in the Nations League that was giving him the edge over his fellow teammate Rafinha for the Ballon d'Or race. As in the Champions League, Rafinha was putting up historic numbers. However, both the Barcelona and Spanish press were heavily hyping up Lamine Yamal, and it was only increasing more and more as Spain would make it all the way to the Nations League final. And these events would slightly divide the Barcelona fans themselves, as the fans had really mixed feelings and were divided on all of the attention between Rafinha and Lamine Yamal. And of course, naturally, many Brazilian fans would dislike Lamine Yamal because of this, as there were also rumors speculating about how Rafinha didn't like all the attention Lamine was getting throughout their later run in the Champions League. In fact, the guy was on Instagram liking posts related to this very subject. However, before the Nations League final against Portugal itself, Lamine Yamal would go on Instagram and post a story captioned, "Born for this." And this is one of the earliest examples I could find of him really starting to post things on Instagram before big matches. However, Lamine Yamal would have one of the worst performances he had throughout the entire tournament. He would fail to score or provide an assist and was overall outplayed completely by Nuno Mendes. To make things worse, he would be subbed out in the 106th minute, not even being able to join the penalty shootout. And to only add fuel to the growing fire, while the rest of the Spanish team was showing their respects to the winners, Lamine Yamal would instead walk out completely. And for the many who saw these clips that were going viral online, it was a clear lack of sportsmanship from Lamine Yamal. And suddenly, the tournament that was giving Yamal a huge push ahead of Rafinha ended up being downplayed as a friendly tournament. But hey, in my opinion, although it was a clear lack of sportsmanship, Yamal still is only a teenager, and losing a final like that no doubt wouldn't feel great. Putting yourself in his shoes, it's easy to see why he would have behaved like that. It's not really all that serious. But from then on, he'd only get more criticism from social media, because during his 18th birthday that summer, many football fans, especially those in the Muslim community, couldn't help but notice that Lamine Yamal was going a little bit overboard. However, slowly, tabloids would talk more and more about his lifestyle. Pundits, podcasters, and social media in general were wondering if all the fame and glory were getting into the youngster's head. Because so far, every time Lamine Yamal hypes himself up on an Instagram story post before a big match, he's actually ended up losing. Earlier in October, before their matchup against the defending Champions League champions PSG, they would end up losing the match 1-2. And yes, aside from the podcast, he'd also make a post on a story before the El Clasico loss as well. Because naturally, when you talk before a match and end up losing, not only does it fuel the opposition, but it also riles up the haters and trolls as well. In fact, after his podcast appearance comments, reports from Spanish media claimed that several Real Madrid players saw the clip before the match, with some allegedly even replaying it in the locker room, with an unnamed Madrid player quoted saying, "He's lost the respect that comes with a badge." During the match, Vinicius Jr., another guy who's also very hated, would basically end up trolling Lamine Yamal, telling him in Spanish, "Solo pases atrás," or "You're only playing backward passes," with Yamal firing back, "No te entiendo, háblame," or "I don't understand you, talk to me." But what I think made this whole situation worse, and just completely blew the Lamine Yamal hate and trolling overboard, was the fact that Lamine Yamal wanted to throw hands, telling Madrid players, "Let's go outside," which just made a lot of people recall his behavior after the Nations League final loss to Portugal. And after this El Clasico, his public perception has just flipped completely. The same generational talent who was loved a year ago for his humility is now painted as arrogant, lacking sportsmanship, and a bad loser, making not only Real Madrid fans but also football fans around the world comment things like he needed humbling. And just like that, the prodigy who seemed like a symbol of football purity has right now become the game's newest and biggest villain. And recently on the pitch, especially in bigger matches, Yamal's form has dipped slightly. Not so dramatically that people need to make a video about it, but just enough to feed the narrative and feed the trolls. Maybe a few missed chances here or a quiet game there, which is all the more reason for overall fans to troll and criticize his recent actions. And hey, to a certain point, I do get it. I mean, come on, at 18 years old and playing a sport, you're as arrogant and confident as ever. And at that age, we certainly didn't feel the amount of pressure that Lamine Yamal has. Plus, being 18 years old, you're not exactly the wisest, but still, you definitely do know what you're doing. Just a couple of months ago, Lamine Yamal was the golden boy. Heck, he almost won the Ballon d'Or. And I'm pretty sure if he had a goal contribution in the Nations League final or won the tournament itself, he would have also definitely won the Ballon d'Or. And now, after all this backlash, the result of this is that Lamine Yamal has been pretty quiet on social media. No cryptic captions, no emoji clapbacks, just silence for now. I know Lamine Yamal is hungry to get back on the pitch and do the talking with his game, but overall, I do have to say that he got humbled. It's funny because last year, Vinny Jr. was probably the most hated footballer on the planet as well. People called him a showboating clown, a diver, or a crybaby. And while I will say he has been guilty of doing some of those things in the past, the difference though is that Vinny got hated for his antics on the pitch, while Lamine Yamal overall is getting trolled for his actions outside the pitch and after the whistle blows. But typically, the world wasn't used to seeing high-profile players do this kind of thing before matches. And for Lamine Yamal, who was associated with this humble behavior and not talking until he proved himself. After all, you'd never see guys like Mbappe, Haaland, or the older generation like Neymar, Messi, or Ronaldo say those kind of things. But don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to make this video to hate Lamine Yamal. I get it, he's still young. The teenager is only still getting more mature, and hopefully figures out how to balance confidence with humility, as he's done a year before. And hopefully, as he grows, he'll get it right. but he's basically still a kid. But what is clear though is that the sport has changed. Social media magnifies everything now. The praise, the hate, and even the moments in between. But at the same time, we've never had a teenager that was this good at only 18 years old, especially in today's social media-driven era. However, in the slight off chance that Lamine Yamal never changes, and that behavior we've seen eventually becomes common, well, I'm actually all for it. As chaotic as it seems, there's an argument to be made that just maybe this kind of drama is good for football. Every era needs a villain after all. Someone who gives the sport a bit of an edge, someone who keeps the headlines alive, and someone who keeps the competition fierce. And right now, accidentally or not, Lamine Yamal has become that kind of figure. Without drama, without personalities that polarize, the sport becomes robotic. I mean, that's why we have El Clasico and derbies in the first place. It's the drama, the history, and everything in between. Players like Ronaldo, sometimes Neymar, and especially Vinny Jr. have all played that role at some point. The arrogance, the taunting, the celebrations, it angered fans, but also made them care. But here's the difference with Yamal. None of those players were painted as villains this early. So hey, if Yamal becomes a villain, who cares? For me, it's actually entertaining. The more he talks, the more he posts, the more dances he does on Instagram. He's just so good that everyone wants to see what he does next, and everyone wants to see if he can continue to back up his talk on the pitch.